Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Omni viewer, and welcome back to Non-Moving Pictures, where we examine movie posters as art. Last time, I said the next set of posters we'd be looking at was of an otherworldly nature, which I suppose was a bit vague on my part. If your guess wasn't on the mark, I'll probably get to whatever poster you guessed at some point, but for today, we're going to be looking at a classic. In fact, the original alien invasion story, War of the Worlds, starting, of course, with the original 1953 poster. If you are a fan of Cold War-era science fiction, this is a poster you should instantly recognize. But unlike previous posters we've looked at so far, this poster provides us our first foray into the realm of the abstract. We'll be seeing a lot of abstract posters in this show, believe you me, especially when we look at older posters. Sometimes that can be as simple as heads floating above a landscape, other times it can be like this. And this truly is an abstract image. Obviously, if you've seen the movie, you know it's not about a giant hand reaching out of the sky to grab people. Rather, this is meant to symbolically represent the invasion. In this picture, the entire invading Martian force is represented by this hand. It's streaking out of the sky like a comet, which of course represents the cylinders the Martians arrive in. And even though it's a hand rather than a face, its intention is perfectly clear. It is at once greedily reaching for the ground, and looks like it's probably going to squash the two poor hapless humans on the ground like bugs. Speaking of which, the fact that the humans are so incredibly tiny really emphasizes the helplessness of the situation. One of the most important elements of War of the Worlds is how the humans are basically outclassed by the Martians in every conceivable way. It's not so much a war as it is an extermination, and having the humans appear so tiny in the presence of the grasping Martian hand really emphasizes this. And then there's the background. Again, like the rest of the image, this red, orange, and yellow backdrop is very abstract. And because it is abstract, it can also represent various things. The first thing that comes to mind is a raging fire, representing the destruction caused by the invasion. The dominating presence of red brings to mind Mars itself. After all, it is the red planet. But also note the peaks of this backdrop. All of these peaks are angled, and they are angled to be parallel with the descending hand and the falling cylinders. So due to how abstract it is, it could be a raging fire rising up, but it could also be a multitude of Martian cylinders coming down. Speaking of which, these weird little orbs with tails are supposed to be the cylinders. I'm not the only one who thinks they look kind of like sperm swimming towards an ovum. Am I? It would be really awkward if that were the case. However, lest you think I have a dirty mind, there is a specific artistic reason for it. After all, a sperm heading towards an ovum is meant to represent the creation of new life. Can it not be said the Martian cylinders plummeting towards Earth have a very similar purpose in mind? You know, considering how much happens in War of the Worlds, it would be tricky to properly represent it in a single image. But by Jove, this poster succeeded. There's just no getting around that it is indeed one of the best. As we've seen time and time again, there's just no beating the classics. Now there have been many different versions of War of the Worlds out there, but the other poster we're going to look at is the 2005 movie poster. Now there were a couple other posters for the 1953 War of the Worlds, but I chose the hand one because the 2005 War of the Worlds poster clearly takes inspiration from it. In many ways, it's kind of the inverse of it. Whereas the 53 poster had a hand reaching down, the 05 poster has a hand reaching up. And as opposed to just having the hand reaching for ground, the entire world is nestled in this Martian's palm. Yes, I'm calling the aliens in the 05 movie Martians. I know they're not actually from Mars, but they don't have any other name, and I'm probably gonna slip up anyway, so Martians it is. However, this image has a new addition that's worth noting. The red weed. The red weed was not present in the 53 movie, but it was featured quite heavily in the 05 movie. In this poster, we see it intertwined with the Martian's hand, reaching up along with it to snake its way across the surface of the planet. It adds to the very alien feel of the whole thing, appropriately so. In fact, the veiny, tendrily aesthetic of the red weed adds an extra layer of invasiveness to the entire feeling of the image. Then there's all of that negative space. Much like Jurassic Park and Godzilla 2014, a good chunk of this poster is black. Now at first you might think, well, duh, we're looking at the planet from outer space. Of course the surrounding area is going to be black. But here's the thing. It's just black. The 53 poster also had an element of outer space in it, but it had stars and planets which made the cosmos feel more populated and, in a way, alive. The 05 poster doesn't have any of that. It's just a very stark black background with the Earth sitting in the middle of it, and the Earth is being held by a very creepy looking hand. It creates a sense of helpless isolation. A force from the void is coming for our planet, and there's no one out there who's gonna help us. Combine that with the equally stark crimson of the title and the tagline, "They're already here," and this is a very disturbing image indeed. However, there's another reason I chose these two posters in particular. If you've read the original War of the Worlds book, you know it's split into two halves. The first half of the story is about the invasion, where the Martians come and lay waste to everything. The second half of the book is about how the Martians have already won and are colonizing the planet, with mankind scattering and trying to stay alive. And interestingly enough, the two posters we've looked at today each represent a half of that book, respectively. The 53 poster, and the movie it's attached to, represent the first half of the book. The emphasis is on the invasion, the attack, the coming of the Martians. The 05 poster and its movie represent the second half of the book, where the Martians have already won and mankind is just trying to survive. The images wind up being two halves of the same coin, and collectively they represent War of the Worlds. Not just their respective movies, but the franchise as a whole. And yeah, I think it's safe to call War of the Worlds a franchise at this point. Through their similarities and their differences, we have two images which perfectly summarize a science fiction classic.
And there you have it. Two different posters from very different eras that wind up complementing each other quite nicely. It's always fun to visit War of the Worlds every now and then. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer, signing off. You know, it occurs to me we haven't looked at any posters for animated movies yet. And I think I've got a good one in mind. It's a poster for a movie concocted by one of animation's most eccentric minds. Feel free to leave your guesses in the comments section below.